Welcome back to Meeke. I'm so glad that you are sticking around. Tammie Tubbs is in studio with me. She's the host of the Tammie Tubbs Show, which airs weekdays at noon on the CW, and I highly recommend that you catch that. Today she's here as a mom, and we're talking about a little-known disease, at least I didn't know about it, called spinal muscular atrophy.
Yes.
SMA.
SMA. You got it.
SMA.
Good job.
Okay, because I'm trying so hard, Tammie.
Yes.
But you lost two sons to this disease, and before we went to break, we were talking about the progression of your pregnancy and kind of wrestling with the what ifs.
Yeah.
And it was a no-brainer. It was not a decision at all. But you know, we have to say, yes, you kept your baby.
Oh, definitely.
You know what I mean? And so it was a no-brainer. But you kept your baby.
Yeah.
And then little Aaron Tyler Tubbs.
Yes.
Is born.
He's born. Full of life. Actually, he was 7.5 pounds, so he was a
He was a
bundle of
whopper
joy.
compared,
Yes, he was.
compared to Terrence Jr.
He was.
And so at what point did you start to know?
It began again with the tongue. You know.
And is that early on? Is that 2 to 3 months, or is it
actually
sooner?
a few weeks? You'll be able to see it. I pay more attention to it because going through the process with Terrence being sick so many times, in and out of the hospital continually, you begin to learn all of the terminology, what to look for, and as a mother you research. And so after having Aaron, as I call him, my tie-tie, I began to pay more attention. I'm aware of things, and so when I saw this, I didn't tell anyone. I said, oh God, here we are again. And I remember saying, Father, are you serious? Are you serious? Again, I just see myself vividly in my home holding him, and he's just smiling. But it was a moment for me to realize that this is much bigger than I am. There has to be a purpose for all of this. There has to be a purpose for all of this.
Do you wrestle at that point? I mean, do you feel like, Lord, where are you? And why is this happening? You
do. But you know, I think when you really are in the Word, you're able to subdue those thoughts. And I know that may seem like a cliche because everyone say trust God, believe God, but when you're really in a dire situation where it's life or death and you know what's against you, you begin to read the Word of God. I mean, our home was serenaded with music. If negative people were not able to embrace our doors, I didn't have visitors to come in and say, well, what are you doing with these children? You need to do this. No, you were not welcome. We love you with the love of God. Praise God. We love you. Blessings to you. I'll send you a picture. But you were not going to come into our home with that negativity.
You know, that's something that I also appreciated because you've written a book about your journey and losing your sons to SMA. But you said you protected your home.
I did.
Now, you talked about there are a lot of people from the outside looking in who wanted to blame you and blame your husband for the disease that your children had. But there was a point that even from within your own home, the enemy did creep in.
Oh, yeah.
And you and your husband began to kind of point the finger at one another. And there was division.
Yes.
And then ultimately separation.
And you know, and I look at that, and my husband and I, we talk about it now, and we've said so many times, for us, it was the best thing that happened to us as a couple. And I know that may seem really bizarre, but there are times when you need space to think about what's going on in your life, because if you stay in that moment, well, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. Well, both of us were carriers, and because both of us were carriers, what happens when we came together, our children began to miss what was called a T cell on their spinal cord. So the enemy wants to come in and play the blame game, and being young, we fell for it. And then you have, you know, certain people that you're talking to, sometimes family members, sometimes mutual friends, and they're saying, well, I just believe this. And so you're listening to this, and that's where we began to seek godly counsel instead of listening to the ungodly counsel. So it's so important that you know the circle of the people that you surround yourself in. But yeah, I'll say openly that we did separate. And it was the best thing for me. And if my husband was here, he would tell you that, yeah, I needed that space, because as a man, he could not deal with what was going on. These are boys. This is a hope and a dream that they're going to play basketball, play football, to be able to do things that, you know, father and son do. But I'm looking at this in the natural. It's never going to happen. Even if they live to be 26 years old, they're still going to be confined to a wheelchair unless you know, God just says, you know what, I'm just going to touch them
Yeah.
and they're going to be healed in Jesus'
Yeah.
name. So, yeah, there was a great separation. And it's so ironic that God used the situation with Terrence to get sick to bring us back together.
Yeah, talk about that, because you also, in the course of dealing with your sons, and, you know, I don't even think that we would do it justice just to say you guys made a lot of hospital trips. I think we wouldn't even be able to scratch the surface. I mean, it's all laid out there in your book. But it was over and over again,
Yeah.
you know, going
Constantly.
to the hospital and visiting these doctors. But you were able to tap into a strength that you didn't know you had until, you know, you have doctors telling you, here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
And you're finally putting your foot down and saying, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. I'm going to
Yeah.
take my son back home, and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
But in the course of that, something happens with Terrence Jr. that brings Terrence Sr.
Yes.
back to his
You
position.
know, and I look at it, and that's why I'm such an advocate for children, because doctors, physicians, they're going to do what they've been taught, you know, medically. We all have degrees, so I can only give what I've been taught as far as radio and television. But when God gives you wisdom and insight, revelation, it's totally different
it
from
goes beyond.
information.
Yeah, that's
and so
right.
when I look back, I understand that it was a revelation, because the doctors and even nurses, you know, they would say, you need to put these children, you know, in a nursing home, or, you know, put them in a facility, because this is too much for you. This is overwhelming. And I was much smaller than I am now, so my body weight and physically my mind, I have a lot of things going on, but I knew that I'm going to take care of my children. I don't want the government to take care of my children. I'm not calling my parents. I'm not calling outside people. God will provide. But in the midst of that, Terrence got sick, and it was like a life or death situation. I believe he was in the hospital, oh my goodness, it was months. Mother's Day, to be exact, of 1 year. He was in 3-4 months. I can't even remember, but it seemed like forever. Back and forth to the hospital, back and forth. And at this particular point, I could not stay in with him in the PICU ICU. That's what they called it. You could not stay in the ICU with your children. So I would have to either stay outside in a chair, sleep, or go home, which you never want to go home.
Right, it's so hard.
And so, you know, I remember this doctor said, listen, he's been here too long. We need his bed. You need to take him home and prepare, because he's not going to make it. You will not listen to us. And I looked him in the face, and there's a chapter in the book, and I said, it's cheaper to trust God. I'll trust God. It's cheaper for me to take him home, to not pay you any more money. Financially, we're, you know, in debt here. I remember having a $25,000, and I was a teacher at that time. I'm like, that's my salary as a teacher.
Sure.
$25,000, that's one medical bill. So I'd rather trust God to take him home and nurse him, because I learned everything that they've done basically anyway, and love on him. And if God sees fit to take him home, he'll be in an environment that he feels peace with. So it was just a journey back and forth with Aaron and Terrence of multiple.
Tammie,
they knew us by name at the hospitals.
Paint a picture of what it was like to care for your sons.
Oh, my.
Because I think, you know, we hear they have no use of their muscles, and they both. You have a 4-year-old, rambunctious. In fact, he was just 2 months shy of being 5.
Yes.
So basically, you have a 5-year-old, you know, by all accounts, he would be a rambunctious little boy.
Yes.
And then you have a 3-year-old son. But the difference is, and now mentally, because this is something I didn't understand, but you helped me, you know, explain this. Mentally, there's no deficiency.
It really depends on the type they are. My oldest son, Terrence, he was just like his mom, very verbal. If he didn't like something, he could speak to you as if I'm speaking to you now. I remember when my daughter Trinity started walking, and they had 2 twin beds that were side by side, you know. And so we had all of their equipment and everything, just like it was kind of like a hospital, a room, I guess you could say, but it was full of life with color. And she begins to walk around the room at 9 months because mommy couldn't hold her. Okay, baby, I love you. Sit down there. And I guess that day she just decides to get up and start walking. And this is Terrence, who's not supposed to be able to vocally, you know, speak because of the muscles. He said, hey, I don't like her. What is she doing?
Wow.
And so Aaron, who I call as Tata, my little baby, you know, he looks and he's going, They couldn't make noises. So Terrence would actually communicate for Aaron for me. Hey, Tata wants his pamp chain. He wants his bottle. And so we had one child, and I think it was a spiritual connection of being able to express what my brother needs. And it helped me as a mom, because there are times when your child can't explain if they have an itch. Well, Terrence could say, my back. So I would rub his back. And then he would say, now tie-tie. So I would do the same for tie-tie.
So let's talk about, and this was sleepless nights up around the clock, because you have to do the things for them that we take for granted. They can't do for themselves. Things like swallowing. You've got to make sure that they don't aspirate, you know, in the middle of the night. Patting them on the back to loosen mucus and all of these things, and moving their legs, and, you know, all of these things are just, and you write in the book about not sleeping. And, you know, I mean, that was,
I never slept sleeping. What? Are you serious?
That?
I had to prepare meals, make sure my husband was taken care of, you know, prepare food for them, because they could not eat proper solid foods. It had to be pureed. So you have to puree it, okay, prepare it. Every minute, every second was vital for me. I didn't have time to dress up. I had on some sweats, a t-shirt. You said paint a picture, put a scarf on your head, okay, put a bun on the back of it. It is what it is. You know, lip gloss if we make it, if not, just some pure Vaseline. It's okay, you know. But on the real deal, their beds are side by side. When you go to sleep at night, you get in bed and you cuddle with your pillow. Well, they couldn't do that. They would actually have to have a pillow under their body, and their heads are tilting down. They're not able to lay flatter on their side, because why? They can actually choke on their own saliva.
Wow.
Because they're drooling so much. They could aspirate at any moment. They could stop breathing. So, you know, people say, oh, I'm just so tired. Stop saying that. Thank God that you are alive. Because these little boys at any point could stop breathing. And as far as like the way that we breathe, their stomach, and I don't know if he could actually see this, it moved all the time. I was just inhale,
because of the stress of trying to breathe.
Trying to breathe, respiratory problems. So it was like a belly breathe. I don't know if he could. It was always constantly, just like this.
Wow. And you're watching that as a mom. And so this goes on for 5 years, or close to 5 years. Let's talk about the day Terrence Jr. died.
I think during that time, we were at peace. It was like the best times ever. For a year, it's like no one went to the hospital. No one was sick. We have this down pat. Yay, I can go back to school and teach now. And that's exactly what
It's amazing how you said for a whole year no one went to the.
No
I mean,
one.
that's so like that's out. People don't even understand that. You know, you're thanking God for a year of no one going to the hospital, and some people go their entire life and not have to worry.
And I want to say this because there was a time where we couldn't get any nursing assistance, you know, for a CNA to come, because there it was stated as it's not a medical need. So as a mother, you have to fight. You have to make sure that they understand, whether it's writing letters, visually sending a picture, going to the doctor. You have to be an advocate. So, you know, the day that he specifically died, I was in school. I was teaching 9th through 12th grade class, and I get this call, and my principal, who was the only person that knew that I had 2 disabled children, because I did not want everyone, oh, Miss Tubbs, I didn't want that. And so I get this call in my mind. I said, oh, well, Tyler, you know what? I need to go suction him. He doesn't want to be bothered with one of the nurses. So lo and behold, I get there and there's an ambulance, and it's not Tyler at all. When I say Tyler, I'm talking about Aaron. It's not Tyler at all. It's Terrence. And we call him Moo Moo. I'm like, he's not moving. What's going on? Wait a minute, we had chocolate cake and chocolate chip cookies and milk the night before. What's going on? His eyes is closed, and they're trying to resuscitate him. There's no pulse. There's nothing.
His heart stopped.
His heart stopped. We go to the hospital. They're trying. I think they probably worked on him, and it could have been more, because they knew us by name. They did not want to give up on that child, but he was gone.
And now I want to make sure we're running out of time. It's happening so quickly. And so I want to quickly kind of transition, because after that, 2.5 months later, your second son at 3 years old passes. But there's something that happens. You start to notice, because they were inseparable, literally. They were together all the time, and then emotionally. You know, and so you started to notice something different in Tyler.
It's like his spirit was broken. You know, you think about an older couple who lived, and it's like we are bonded. The day that Terrence actually passed away, we put Aaron in the hospital, because I knew that I couldn't physically take care of him. So we took him to the hospital to make sure that he was okay. And so once the funeral arrangements were over and everything, when I got my baby back, I said, you know what? His spirit is broken. He wasn't the same child. He wouldn't eat. He was just like really withdrawn.
You describe in the book him staring at the ceiling.
Yes.
Not wanting to interact with anyone.
That was the only time that he would smile, when he would stare up at the ceiling, you know, and I said, oh my God, he's entertaining angels. And I remember the day that he actually passed away, we were in the room and the nurse said, Miss Tubbs, something is going on with Tata. And I was like, okay. I said, I'll be in a minute. So I walked in and he was just, and his eyes would close and I would say, Tyler, and he would open them up. He has beautiful hazel brown eyes, of course, and then he would go back, and I was like, Tyler, and then it hit me. And I said, oh my goodness, no, you cannot leave mommy. And I start crying because I was like, God, do not allow this to happen. I can't do this. This is too soon. No. And so lo and behold, he closed his eyes and the monitor, because we had a post office, we had a hospital at home. It said beep, and he was gone. We dialed 911. They came, they tried to resuscitate him, but he went so long without oxygen. I think it was like 30, 40 minutes without oxygen to the brain that he was actually brain dead. So he actually, both of my children passed away at my home.
Tammie, but you said something in the book that you know, as you were there in that moment and watching him kind of go from this life to the next, there was a part of you that just wanted to hold on to him, but you realized that he didn't want to be here anymore. And you said that you said to him, it's okay. It's okay. If you don't, and at that point,
Mommy will be okay. If you want to go, it's okay. And I think I said that because I'd seen those little boys be pricked so many times of, you know how you go to get an IV? Well, 12, 13 times. And specifically one time with Tyler, they had to put an IV here. Can you imagine that? I didn't want him to be tortured anymore. And I said, God, if you see fit, it's okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to stop desiring what we want and allow God to be God in our lives.
Yeah. How do you see God being glorified in this situation?
At that moment, you don't. But during the funerals, I saw why. There were a lot of people who came to Christ, one of my sisters specifically. And you often are asked, why do I go through what I go through? It's because our lives are supposed to be examples. If he had to use my sons to bring people to Christ, because I know they're in heaven, I know where they are. It helps me to stay grounded, to stay humble, and to love in spite of, to know that one day I'll be able to see them again. So it's kind of like a, you know, it's the worst situation. I would never want my children to die, but I thank God that he took them when he did, because he knew as much as I could handle. And he knew that I would use it as ministry to be able to bless other women and families as a whole, because it's so much that women we don't talk about, and we need an outlet. And so I look at even their faces, you know, on the cover, and it's life.
Yeah.
And you have to live in the moment.
Yeah.
There are no regrets. My husband and I, we have no regrets whatsoever. We made sure that they lived in the finest, that we drove the finest, because they couldn't sit up.
You took vacations with them and all of those things. I tell you what, Tammie, we're going to take a break. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to kind of wrap up and talking about your mission to bring awareness to SMA. You've got an event coming up, and sort of your crusade and how God has really used. You made me cry, is what I'm saying.
How to start a business with no money. You don't need money to start a business. A lot of people miss that. A lot of people think, I gotta have all the components.
And it is the sweetest little gift you're ever gonna make at home, literally.
As a believer, we have the opportunity to advance the kingdom of God in everything we do. And our family starts at home with our families, I believe, and in our local churches, in our communities.